Welcome everybody, this is Nick with O3 Drop. So today I wanted to bring you a pretty interesting deck list that I threw together over the last week or two. It's definitely not something that's super meta or even close to tier 1 necessarily. However, it is a pretty fun deck and it's definitely something that you can steal some wins with once you practice it a bit. So let's go ahead and talk about this. So what it is I have the draft leader, the Vegeta here. Now, what he does is you discard one card from your hand, and you gain 5,000 attack plus critical for the rest of the turn. And then once you're at 4 or less life, you can flip over, draw 2 cards. And so let's go ahead and awaken here and take a look at that as well. So again, on his other side, it does the same thing. Once per turn, you discard one card from your hand, and you gain 5,000 in critical. Plus, when he attacks, you draw 1 card. So what's interesting to me about this leader is obviously you don't want to discard cards from your hand because hand advantage is key in this game. However, when you discard, you do gain the 5,000 along with the critical. So it's almost as if the card you discarded with, you were just comboing with. The only difference is you also gain critical out of it as well. So don't look at it as discarding a card as much as comboing with that card that you're discarding. So let's talk about some of the deck choices here. Starting out, we do have 4 of the Saiyan Kaba. In this deck, I'm not a super huge fan of this card just because I'd rather crit them down all the way, down their life, rather than just give them, 2 cards in their hand with a double strike. However, I found that it was kind of hard to awaken without it. My only other alternative, I guess, would be to splash in blue and run results, but I really just wanted this to be mono red or red black. So it's still a decent card, especially because it is a 1 cost that swings for double strike. So if your opponent's down at 2 life and you still have 3 or 4 left, you can slam him down for 1 energy, swing for double strike, and see what happens. Moving into the Russian Warrior Pan. Now, I heavily considered the Goku, the new one from the starter deck here, because overall they give you the same thing. Pain gives you 5 when you play her, plus you combo there for 5, so that's 10k. Both this and the Goku from the starter deck cost 1 to combo with, and then when you combo both of them, you do get to draw a card. Now, I did choose the Pan in the long run, and here's why. So I can play the Pan down and give my leader 5, but then, later on play a Scientist Fu or something else and use that extra 5 to combo with, the Scientist Fu or whatever else. The other thing is, if I'm using this defensively, if I have to combo to save myself, the Goku does cost the 1 to combo with. And so the problem with that is in a mono red deck, you don't always have the energy open to be able to use that. So I found a lot of times my hand would just be stuck with the Goku in it. So I do think this is still a pretty good card. Definitely, you play it down, combo with it, draw a card. That's always good. So now let's move on to the 2 drops. Now initially, whenever I had this card in the deck, the Quick Rush Trunks, it was because I was playing the 4-drop Trunks, the Chain Attack Trunks. I've since taken that out just because I don't always get the Quick Rush Trunks out. And if I don't have this out, there's not a lot of games where I want to pay 4 energy for 1 card. To be honest, everything in this deck is about getting stuff out for 3 or less. There's literally not a single card in this deck that I would pay more than 3 energies for. And half the time I don't even pay those 3 energies. I just, play other stuff. So now having said that, if you really need to, this is a good attacker because he does have 15k critical for 2. The other thing is we do run the Champas in this deck, so you can surprise double strike your opponent. So, I mean, just the Champa alone will put him at, 25 double strike crit, and that's always nice to have. So then we go on to Vados. This is just a super combo. Everybody should be used to these by now. This isn't anything new. When you're at 4 or less life, play it, get 10k, draw a card. We do have the Miraculous Comeback Gohans here. Now, this card has actually dropped in value since set 2. I think it's down around $10 right now, so if you don't have your set, make sure you pick those up because this is a really good card. In this deck, a lot of times you're going to have, small hand size, and so you can either, even if you have, let's say 6 or 7 cards, between discarding 1 for the ability and then comboing, you can always get down to 4 cards and put this guy down for game. So then we'll move on to this Goku. Now, initially, I was playing the time machine extra, or not time machine, the spaceship extra card from this set that lets you play a card from the top 7 that costs, or that has 15k attack or less. I'm not a huge fan of paying 3 for him. However, if you need to, you can. It's not the worst thing in the world, depending on the situation. One thing that I do like about him too is that because his cost increases whenever you have him out after you're down at 4 life, it definitely makes some interesting interactions with things like Kale and other stuff. And that has come up once or twice where my opponent will, pick cards based on him having 3 and then realize he's not a 3 cost anymore on the field. So that's always kind of interesting. So then we'll move on. And we have the Furthering Destruction Champa. Again, this is a card that pretty much everyone should know what it does at this point, but you do combo with it. It gives whatever is attacking double strike plus 10k. This is really good to use with the leader because, again, with his ability, he's already gaining 5 plus the crit, so this gives him another 10 in double strike. This is also good for, surprise double striking for game. And so now we'll move on to the Gohan. This is a really interesting Gohan because this is one of the few decks where I may end up actually taking the double strike over the draw every now and then, especially if they're at 2 life. I mean, I've laid this thing down and swung for game quite a few times already, so this is definitely a game ender. However, if the game is progressing slowly, you can just throw him down and use him to draw cards. Obviously, that's a good way to go as well. So on to Fearless Pan. I don't actually use this as much as I should. To be honest, a lot of times this ends up just being a 5k combo or even an energy. So, if you are able to use this a bit better than I do, it'd probably improve the deck. However, if not, or if maybe you just don't have it, you can cut these and find something else to put in here. The spaceship that I was talking about would be a good way to go. But if you are able to play this, again, it does give everything on your side 5k in double strike, so that's always a good way to go. Now, this is probably the spiciest thing right here that I have in this deck. I initially didn't have this in, but it occurred to me that if I already have the 3-drop Goku out, then this technically just takes 1 energy and 1 card from my hand. And this is basically a dual strike, double attack, 30k attacker. So, I mean, if you have the 3-drop Goku out and you can evolve into this for 1 energy and discarding 1 card, like, that's a no-brainer. I mean, 30k dual strike, double strike, dual attack, yeah, that's something that's good in pretty much every deck. Now, I will say a fair amount of time these do just get charged, but when you do need it, it's really good. So then we'll go on to the black cards, and I do have Scientist Fu here. I do have 2 of these. One thing that, kind of limits this deck a little bit is the ability to draw cards. So having the Scientist Fu, where you get a 25k double strike attacker for 1 energy, plus you get to draw 2 cards, is always good. Between this and MC Gohan, like, yeah, you can surprise your opponent from 5 life to nothing in 1 turn if you play everything right and if you have a decent draw. So this is probably, again, I think this is one of the best new cards to have come out. Tournament pack or not, like, it's so good. I will say the price on these has actually dropped quite a bit as well. I mean, these are down around $15-16 last I saw. So if you don't have at least 2 Scientist Fu, try to pick a couple up. You probably only need 2. So if you can get a hold of 2 of these things, that'll probably do you for basically any deck you make. Now here we do have the Increasing Evil Mass Saiyan. With the Kaba in the deck, you could probably take this one out to put something else in if you wanted to. I do like him for the board clear, but at the same time, I don't like being forced to take a life form. At least Kaba gives you the option. I may sideboard this in the future and find just a different black card to go in. The SR Trunks from the new set would be kind of cool in this deck. I could also see the mirror that makes your opponent discard a card would be okay. Even the critical mirror might be okay. But this is a card that I might start sideboarding in and only bring it in if my opponent doesn't want to attack me at all. So then we go on to the Unending Awakening. This is just because I feel like in this meta, you can't run a deck without negates. As good as you may think you or your deck is, I think having negates is always the way to go, at least a few. So we do have 3 of these here, and again, this does give your leader the plus 5k because he is a red Saiyan. So I definitely like this in this deck. Now the Planet M2, this is probably the second spiciest thing in this entire deck. Now when you play this, you don't get to draw the card, but you can use this every turn. So let's say your opponent puts out a Yajirobe. You can swing in with your leader. They're probably not going to block with the Yajirobe because his revenge would be useless. And then you just Planet M2 and kill the Yajirobe even though he's not involved in the combat. So just stuff like that. Like this is so good, especially because when you use your ability, you're already gaining 5k. And so if you Planet M2 them, so like let's say they're awakened and you're not. So they're at 15, you're at 10. Discard for your ability, you match them at 15. You swing in, Planet M2, they're down at 10k now. So now they have to at least combo 10,000 from their hand to block it. And you're not even awakened yet. So like when that happens when you're both at 15, you go up to 20, they go down to 10, then they got to combo 15k from their hand to stop the attack. So this is just a really good card. The other thing that I like about this in this deck is that it technically becomes a 5k combo once you already have one out on the field. Because if you draw your second or third ones, you can just either use them as energy or discard them for the Vegeta ability. And so what would have been a useless card in almost any other deck now becomes a 5k combo. So again, this is definitely not meant to be, you know, a god tier deck that just destroys the meta, but it's something that I've had a lot of fun with for the last week or two. So if you guys have any questions or anything, just leave them in the comments below. And thank you guys for watching. Have a great night.